Slam Jam with Coach K, tell you now. Whipping up the court, bringing the rhythm and mad fun. Learning, playing, and laughing, we never stop. Pickleball podcast, taking it to the top.
Hello, Jam fam, and bloody welcome back to, would you believe it, only our second episode of 2025, and it's already April. We didn't forget about you, don't worry. Slam Jam this year is more about the players and the people in it. We're going to be focusing more on guest interviews in 2025 and leaving the serious stuff to a new medium, which you should follow if you haven't already, and it's called Perforated Pickleball. That's where you can find us, Facebook and Instagram at Perforated Pickleball. I'm solo today, but don't worry, the band hasn't broken up. Colin and Ty will be joining me in future episodes, don't worry about that. But today, we're joined by a genuine pioneer of Australian pickleball. Back when most people hadn't even heard of the sport, this guy was already out there setting up the first club in Victoria with just 4 paddles and a net. He's now the captain of the Melbourne Mavericks in Major League Pickleball Australia, a Yola-sponsored pro and one of the fiercest competitors on court. This man's whole journey has a little bit of everything: resilience, leadership, pain, and triumph. This one could be a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. So let's dive into it, from building pickleball from ground up, leading a pro team, and overcoming a significant illness along the way. Coming out swinging, it's Aaron Blitz. Welcome, mate.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm glad you said it. Mate, you've been up here for a bit of a vacay after the tournament at Tweed Heads. You stayed up for an extra few days. We've got Ellie over here as well, the fiancée. How's it been on the GC?
It's been awesome. Just 23 degrees every day, blue sky. Couldn't ask for anything better, especially coming off a big term. I work as a high school teacher, so it's been good to relax, especially after a big event, first one of the year, and a big term.
Yeah, it was a big event, mate. But I want to start from the very beginning. So take us back to the early days. I guess, what was the moment that drew you into pickleball, and did you have any idea at the time how big it could become in Australia?
7 to 8 years ago, just was studying. I was doing my Bachelor of Business, so I majored in banking and finance and economics, and was playing high-level tennis, like high-level pennant in Victoria. I was originally a ranked junior, probably like top 100 in Victoria, and then came out of high school, did my university degree, and I was doing some part-time tennis coaching with a guy called Matthew Monty, who was the head coach at Pearsdale Tennis Club and a few other clubs. And I was just playing Tuesday night tennis one time, and Bill Beckwith was a 70-year-old American that came over here, retired, and he was there one night for Tuesday night tennis and said, "Guys, you want to try this game called pickleball?" And I was like, what the heck is he talking about? We gave it a go with Matthew Monty and fell in love with it. And we're like, why not start a club? There was no one else in Victoria doing it at the time. I think might have maybe had a few venues in Queensland at the time. Like you would have had basically Jen Ramamurthy and a few of those guys starting those ones up. But yeah, just one net, 4 paddles, an hour and 20 minutes from the city in Melbourne. And I started, Southeast Melbourne Pickleball Club. And you don't really see it on the socials anymore, but for the first 4 years, it was huge and everyone knew about it. Whenever people travelled to Melbourne, they would come down to our club, which was amazing at that time.
So what was the scene like back then? So this is 2018.
Yeah.
So I guess, the sporting capital of Australia is Melbourne, full stop.
Yeah.
But Southeast Queensland in particular is, I guess, the epicentre, but it's vastly being overtaken by New South Wales now in terms of members. Yeah. I'm a little surprised that Victoria's been a little laggy, but in saying that, back then, how big was Queensland by comparison to Victoria? Because it sounded like you had a pretty good start.
I think we were just tiny because it was literally us in Melbourne, I guess closer to the city, and then our next biggest clubs were out like Ballarat, was maybe like a month after us. And I know we did some cross games with them. And then you had Wangaratta, then you had Warrnambool. So we had all these regional hubs, which is what's good about Victoria. It kind of just boomed pickleball. And then closer to the city, where it was very hard to get into basketball and badminton stadiums. Luckily in Melbourne, there's probably 100 or hundreds of badminton stadiums that we could start pickleball in. It was just the easiest way. We were the only one from a tennis club probably the first year or two, because tennis clubs back then just refused to have pickleball there. But our club realised really quickly they would have more people on one Wednesday night playing pickleball than they would have tennis in 2-3 months.
Yeah.
So they were making more income from that, and just, I guess things broke down in the end, and that wasn't our fault. It was just Matthew Monty, when he was coaching there, he wanted to go to China to do pickleball coaching, and the tennis club was like, we need a new tennis coach, but all the new tennis coaches that wanted to come in didn't want any pickleball there because they thought it would steal people. And then now there's no pickleball there, and now there's barely any tennis there. So that whole Southeast Melbourne pickleball kind of dissolved a bit, which is unfortunate. Probably only happened 12 months ago. But to answer your question, like it wasn't huge in Melbourne at that time. That's why I had to travel to nationals in 2019 just to kind of get my level and see where it was. And that's when you play against a Mitch Hargraves and a Sumi and a Jen. Well, Nick Cooper was actually in Melbourne in 2018, and he helped us start. And then he started Pickleball Superstore.
Is he living in Melbourne?
Yeah, he was living in Melbourne, St Kilda at the time, because his wife was, I think she was in ballet.
Yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, so they were down there for years. Now. Yeah, and they got twins. They obviously moved more up here. So I've known Nick Cooper and a few of those top dogs in pickleball since its inception. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So tell us about, co-founding the first pickleball club in Victoria with just one net and 4 paddles. What was the grind like trying to build a community around a sport no one really knew yet?
Tough, because obviously I think the stigma around pickleball was like, oh, it's just for lazy tennis players that can't make it. And just, I found it really fun.
What was like the demographic? Because straight away we all think older people.
Yeah.
Start with the older people. But how did you
I think
start?
our start was different to most clubs because obviously me and Matt were younger. Like Matt's only a couple of years older than me. We've got the exact same birthday. Right. So that's worked out well. But we just had like my friends get involved, his friends, family, and then just people in the local community. We're a bit younger in Petersdale at that time, which was really good. We get a few elderly or retired people. But I think what was amazing about our club was that we had that wide range of demographics. So when people did come and play pickleball, they weren't like, oh, wow, it's just for old people. Yeah. You had someone like me playing there, and it's played high-level tennis, and I would have a few of my mates that have done it before. So I think that was special for us because I know out in regional hubs, it was a lot of older people. So when we did come together for like we ran the very first Victorian Open in 2018, and it was, a lot of older demographics or their grandchildren if you were lucky.
So put a number on it for me. How many people do you reckon you've introduced to pickleball and or done an intro to pickleball session with?
There would have to be thousands of people in Melbourne. I think the first 2, 3, 4 years, I probably knew everyone that played pickleball in Melbourne through, because after 2018 started my own club. 2020 we started Pickleball Victoria, so the state organisation,
which
I'm still on.
Yeah,
I was the founding secretary.
Right.
So I was grinding away as a volunteer, as a secretary, and then I was going to new clubs and helping them start with like a come and try session. So Sorrento, for example, which is closer to me, they've got like over 100 members now. I was there the very first day. Warrnambool, Ballarat, I helped them kind of like get started a little bit, and all those bigger clubs in Melbourne, like Manningham is our biggest club at the moment. It's got like 600 Pickleball Australia members. Okay. I was there when they did the first come and try, and that was just me donating my time. Like I wasn't getting paid for any of this. Yeah. I've kind of shifted away from that nowadays because there's so many other people that can do it, and I try and obviously do my own clinics, and I feel like I've done my time a little bit helping the community, and I still do. I'm obviously still a volunteer on the state board. But thousands of people. I've probably, there's over 100 venues in Victoria right now, and I reckon 30 or 40 of them I was there at the start, which I always think like Pickleball Victoria is my own little baby sometimes too. Yeah. So I'm the only existing board member that was there from 2020.
So I guess looking at the state of pickleball now compared to 2018, what surprises you most about where the game has gone, and where do you think it still needs to go?
I think just the level of athletes that have come into the sport. And I think the paddles, like thinking back to when I first started, obviously Yola was just table tennis. They didn't come into pickleball till like 2 years ago. Yeah. I played with a Manta paddle, and back then you could
heard of it.
Yes, it's a Canadian brand. They were actually big in Australia at the time and big in pickleball in the US, but you could actually get your own custom design on the paddle.
What'd you go with?
I went with a T-Rex because I love dinosaurs. Okay. So I had a few of them. I know Lucy, shout out, she started about 2020, and she got one with Seinfeld characters on the
Okay, so you could really go with anything.
anything you wanted, because back then you didn't have like carbon or the texture. It was
Yeah.
just like a smooth paddle, and you can have whatever you want on the front of it.
Have you still got it?
Yeah, I've still got the 2 T-Rex ones. It's what I won a national championship with. So,
Really?
So they're special to me. Yeah.
Oh wow! How many paddles would you actually have, like, just floating around at home? You reckon?
Oh, I've
Ellis
reduced.
just laughed. You probably didn't pick it up. And Ellis just laughed.
I've reduced it over the last couple of years.
What do you mean reduced it?
Well, I just like would give them away, or I've
Okay.
sold some, or
I reckon there's certain ones you won't ever give away.
yeah.
Like
So
the
I've
national
my national
T-Rex.
championship one, and I obviously with that one too, I represented Victoria with some of those paddles when Battle of the Border was happening, which doesn't exist now, and you might not know about it.
Battle of the Border.
Yeah, it used to be Victoria versus New South Wales. Used to all go to Wangaratta, so the top 10
Okay.
males and top 10 females from each state would meet for a couple of years. COVID kind of impacted it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's how I first, after nationals with Mitch, we actually would always be, he would be the number 1 New South Wales player and I'd be
Yeah.
the number 1 Victorian player, and we always versed each other every year. So that's why we've become close mates over the years, because we were just competitors against
Yeah.
each other. But yeah, I don't know, probably 20, 30 paddles still. And I've got my own special collection, which I do like to post on Instagram a bit. I've got my Yola ones that have been banned previously. I like to collect that are fresh,
got one in
brand
the
new.
back of the car.
Yeah, Gen 3, brand new. The Alpha paddle, which was a prototype. Dale from 60 was kind enough to give me their Blitz paddle. They've got one that's got Blitz written on it. It was with Technofiber. I thought that'd be really
Is it
cool.
APO, yeah?
Yeah.
So the Blitz was just a name that he coincidentally named a paddle?
Yeah,
It wasn't
he just had like a line with 4 different names. Obviously, Blitz in other languages just means like really fast.
Yeah.
Like in German. So I just saw that pattern and was like, Dale, I need to get my hand on one of these, and he helped me out, luckily, which I think's really cool. So I've got my own collection, which I'm hoping down the track it will definitely mean something to me,
Yeah.
but it might sell them down the track. And
Yeah.
pickleball's at this point now where it's like, why can't it be in 30, 40 years? You have some of this memorabilia that
I was about to
people
use
won't
the
have
M word,
access,
memorabilia.
access to, because people just don't think of it at the time. But why not have a brand new Alpha Yola paddle that only the pros got from America and Australia, that I've got a brand new one sitting at home, sitting for one day, that might be one of 100 or something like that, which is really cool.
So coming back to, I guess, a bit of the question, like where do you think the game still needs to go? I mean, obviously you're playing professional pickleball, which, you know, has only really existed for the last, 2.5, 3 years, really. And really hit its straps last year with MLP Australia and expanding to, teams of, we've got 12 now, Asian teams. We had international players. You've been so privileged to play with seriously good players and against.
Yeah.
But where do you think the sport needs to go here in Australia?
It needs to be a nationally recognised sport to start with, which I know Pickleball Australia is trying really hard to do, and I think there's obviously another party involved now that's trying to get involved in that space. But
You could name them. They're not the
or
white
Tennis
elephant.
Australia, obviously, which luckily I was part of that Australian Open event in January. But I think the next stage is getting these, I guess, tennis or other athletes into the sport, those high-ranking table tennis players, like we've seen with Danny Townsend, and tennis players like Tom Evans come into the sport. It's only going to elevate the level. Like if you look at the level, 2-3 years ago, you've got someone like myself, like winning a lot of things, but now you see like the level's just grown like another whole step, and all these very talented, very athletic players are coming in that have different techniques and abilities. It's just changed the whole sport. And then you've got the hotter paddles, the extra spin. Like when I first started playing smooth paddle, you couldn't spin at all. It was all one-hand backhands, one-handed shots and flat volleys, and then just dink all day, which is my whole game from the start. Like I still try and out-dink people to this day. But nowadays, like it's just power. You can speed up from anywhere. Like I've had to develop a 2-hand backhand from the kitchen line, which I never thought would happen. I think it's just, the level of athletes, really. That's the long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. Like it would be, when you bring up those individuals in Tom Evans and Danielle Townsend, like I can actually remember, and we've spoken about it on this podcast, Danielle Townsend, her first ever tournament was a Slam Jam tournament.
Nice.
And now she's a pro, former number 1 draft pick, doing awesome things. And Tom Evans, getting more and more familiar with his story. I think you were actually part of like his first hit.
So when
right?
he first had a quick hit up here when he played an ITF tournament, then he came to Melbourne, messaged me on Instagram, and he's like, I'm a high level
you
tennis.
know? each other?
No, he just
No,
messaged
right.
me because obviously I've been around in the sport for a while, especially down in Victoria. He messaged me and he would drive an hour and a bit just to have a hit with me, and I just show him the ropes. And obviously his singles is already really good and his doubles took a little bit of time. But mind you, after his first couple of hits, he probably would have been top 20 in Australia straight away anyway, and then Helena too.
Yeah.
So that was amazing to be kind of part of his journey as well. And I've been a part of a lot of people's journey, especially in Victoria. Everyone I've tried to help a lot of people along the way, and I've never been that person that's like, oh, this guy's going to be better than me, or he's getting better than me, I'm not going to help him. I've tried to help everyone. Like on the weekend, like you got someone like Zach Rabovic come back from the US to Melbourne, wanted some hits. We've been playing, and I like to try and help him as much as I can as well, because I want these guys to be successful, like Tom Evans and Helena, and you got a few of these other up and coming players in Melbourne now as well.
How good is it when you introduce someone to pickleball and, I don't know, within the first dinking and get into a rally, and you just know this person's going to get it, right? Versus, I mean, people that might take a little longer.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, shit, I've got someone I can now call for a game here. Like, it's such a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's definitely like that the first 3 years, because it was hard to get a good hit down here because Queensland was the epicenter. It would just be like if someone could have fast hands, volley, and drive the ball from the back of the court, you're like, well, you're set now, and that's how you're going to get better. But yeah, I think coming across those people is becoming a lot easier now, especially with obviously both pro leagues, and I think PPA Australia, which obviously I'm an ambassador of, has done a really good job, and NPL, give them credit as well, has done a really good job of especially spreading the sport in Melbourne. Like there's a lot of players that have come into it in Melbourne that I can hit with because of NPL. Because they're a bit more local based, which is amazing.
Does Ellie play?
Not really.
So she's obviously had a hit. Now, be brutally honest here.
Yeah, she used to come to Pearsdale, Southeast Melbourne Pickleball, bring her friends along. Yeah.
So when she first had a hit, did you get that feeling like she's got something here?
Be honest. I think she was more of a dancer back in the day. That's going to be my answer. Yeah. So she's probably a bit more creative and has better footwork than me. Like, wow.
Hey, I need to show you a clip of me doing 2 spins on the court. I think you'll love it.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Nah, but she's been great. So I think she's really supported me. Like obviously pickleball isn't her top priority. But she lets me go on all these trips, and it's been amazing. And especially through some of the hard times of my life. So I'm very grateful.
Which we'll definitely get into, mate. Well, now I want to get on to MLP Australia and the Melbourne Mavericks. I know how much you love the Mavs. Like, I think you've been the best ambassador for your team by the length of the straight. So as captain of the Melbourne Mavericks, what's been the biggest challenge in managing personalities, chemistry, and the pressure to perform on the MLP stage?
I think for me, it's just that team chemistry. I've actually found it kind of easy to bring these teams together and have that team chemistry. Like I've always been super organised. So everyone in my team knows exactly what they need to do, where they need to be at. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm a pretty approachable person, know a lot about the game. So a lot of these people that join the Melbourne Mavericks, they don't have to worry about things outside of them playing on the MLP weekend, because I try and deal with all of that for them, which I take on board, which is fine. But I think, these teams, it's just picking the right people as well. Like when I draft, I'm not trying to draft someone, like there was a few players last season, which I won't name, that just probably made it a bit difficult for their teams. They could be really good players, but sometimes it's kind of hard to buy into a team if you're playing with people that you might not like, or they're maybe not bringing the right attitude on court. So I think that's been the biggest one. Is well, I've done 3 or 4 drafts now. It's just picking people that are actually good people that, like me, want to just do really well on the weekend, try our best and see how we go.
You played with some legends there.
Yeah.
You really have. You've picked well in that regard.
Yeah.
Tell us, I guess, a little bit of something about, those particular players. Who springs to mind first and why?
Wes Gabrielson, obviously, and Rob Cassidy, and now Joey Farias. Like, we're talking about guys that I watched back in 2018 just to learn how to play the game properly, and then can't believe I get to play pro-level pickleball with them. The only person that I haven't now is Ben Johns, which I doubt he'll be coming to MLP Australia. But
hey, we can ask him. We'll ask him.
might have to put in a special request. But that's why I was hoping to meet him at the UPA event at the start of the year. But yeah, some amazing people. And I got to like meet someone like Kyle Yates, for example, last season. Got to play against him, which I thought was amazing. Someone that was the world #1 in 2018 when I was watching pickleball. In Australia, there was obviously any other pros and no one else at that level. So you had to kind of watch on YouTube and see these guys before even the PPA tour started in the US. It was just like the US nationals and stuff. So that's what Kyle Yates, Wes Gabrielson's in the Hall of Fame. So I played against and played with a Hall of Famer. I'm sure Rob Cassidy will be joining that list at some stage, and Joey Farias. So it's I'm really excited for this season. And yeah, I've been blessed with some of the partners I've had.
Have you seen some of those videos where they compare like 2018, 16 pickleball versus like more modern pickleball?
Yeah.
Where they have like them stacked and like.
Well, I even try and do that with some. I've actually sent to Mitch like some videos of when we've played doubles and singles against each other in like 2019. And like you can just tell, like you just cannot get any spin or any power off the paddle. It's kind of just like grind it out, or you just got to slap some winners and hope. It's just crazy to see the level. And I think it is skill level. And also, I think the equipment that we use now as well.
What I mean, I feel like it's going to be very hard to compare. But what sort of era did you personally like to play in? From 2018 to 2025, it's a fair era.
I think 2022, 2023 was a really good year. I think, especially 2023, I think the paddles weren't too hot, but they were like a little bit quicker. They had a bit more grit. And then everyone was developing like the spin and the drives. And I think it was at a stage where it wasn't like too powerful to kind of impact the game like it has now, but also wasn't as slow and boring as it probably was beforehand. Even though I enjoyed trying to outdink Martin Clark every time we played against each other, but just I guess for television and pro streaming, it's probably not the way to get bigger audiences.
Yeah.
But I think obviously when Yola came into the game, they brought out new tech and it was a little bit obviously more powerful, more spin, and so 2023 would be my era. But look, playing with fiberglass paddles in 2018 was quite fun as well. But I would love for a few of us pros to just play with those old paddles because I think it'd be some different results. Especially like I joke with Joey Wyatt all the time, like bring back the fiberglass paddle because he was the same. He liked all that, but his game's obviously skyrocketed as well with the new paddles.
Yeah. Well, the paddle tech's really interesting. It's going to be funny, like, if you go back to those videos, say 2030, what are people going to be saying about like watching? Because I mean, the paddle is just like this object in this video. You're not going to realize it literally was not the same paddle that you're playing with today or in say 2030. And they're going to be laughing going, tactically, you guys had no idea how to play this game, right?
Yeah, well, I look back at some of the people that play now and think, like they're just getting away with it because of the paddle and the grit, and tennis players are easily able to convert right now into the sport, especially in singles because they can just slap away and they know the ball's going to spin in. Back in the day, you could not do that. You had to like be measured in every ball you hit because you just didn't get much power or grit. So I still do it nowadays. For 8 years ago, imagine in 2030, it's going to be pretty crazy to see where the tech is, but I think it's going to get to a point where they're going to have to revert to either softer balls or cap where the paddle power is at the moment.
That will be interesting to watch. I don't think we have time to talk about paddles all day, but I know what you're saying. Mate, the MLP format, it's intense, right? So team-based, short rallies, high stakes. How do you personally prepare for that kind of environment compared to a traditional tournament play?
I think it's just like reducing your errors. Like if you watch MLP compared to like the PPA events, it's completely different because people are trying to be more measured because they know as soon as you miss a dink, miss a return, miss a serve, that's a point gone. While in normal scoring, traditional scoring, you can be a little bit more aggressive, especially when you've hit your serve or something like that, because you know that they're not going to get a point on the scoreboard. So I think just practicing that pressure in your training is just trying not to miss and try and add those games in. Like I know Broden, he's my drilling partner down at Frankston in Melbourne. We just play games where like we're just first to 5 points, just dinking, and you can only dink, and we're just going to out dink each other with no speed ups and just try and reduce how many errors that we get. I think that is definitely the biggest change I've found.
Tell me what it's like on draft day once you picked your team. So once you've got your whole team set, what do you do next?
Pray that they all can get visas into the country. I think it's more just seeing if their personalities actually match what's kind of being perceived on their social media or what other people have said.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's my biggest fear, is having someone that's going to come here, play, or could be interstate, and they end up being like a bit of a cancer for the team, which luckily for me has never happened. I think I've pretty well researched, maybe not as well researched as George Wall, but he normally does a really good job. But I think, just making sure, I guess, personalities are not crashing.
With the personality piece being so important to you, how many people would you speak to ahead of the draft?
I speak to a lot of people, yeah. There was probably like 10 different American males I spoke to before this draft, quite a few different picks from Asia. Someone like Elby, who I drafted, which couldn't make the first event, she reached out to me like 3 days prior, and she had a low duper, but she sent me all her videos and her current results in the US.
Without asking? Like she
just
approached you?
Yeah, she approached me, and she's like, "Oh, you seem approachable. Here's some of my..."
She wasn't wrong.
Yeah. And then, she showed me, and I was like, you know what? Like, it's so good that I've got her there, because I was pick one and pick like 25 or 24. Like, I had to wait a long time for my next female. So it was good to have someone there that maybe some of the other captains weren't looking at. I think the only other captain that was following her was George Wall, which is expected. But yeah, I think just a bit of that.
Mate, that's a interesting story. I'm just going to move these out because now I'm freaking out that they've been in the camera view the whole time, which I don't mind. I'm having a view with Blitz. It's an interesting story you bring up there about the fact that she approached you. So she was in the draft. She knew that from a duper point of view, she was low.
Yeah.
She went out of her way to compile some footage so that she could send it to not only yourself, but maybe other captains to like make a stand for herself. And you ended up picking her. Yeah. Like, I'm really interested in getting to a space where pro pickleballers are putting themselves out there. Because as Aussies, we're not great at it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of players that don't put themselves out there, and I think that does hurt them going into the draft. I think what was good about Elby was that she's only been playing pickleball for 6 months, but she went to Worlds, the PPA tour in December, like the Worlds event, which is the biggest PPA pro event. She made the second round of the pro women's draw, nearly beat like the world number 20. And then she makes pro main draw for doubles occasionally. At the moment, she's only played like 3 or 4 events. So like her level over the next 12 months is going to get scary. And I know she's applied for PPA Asia too, the Trailblazer program. She's originally from Taiwan. I think she's just on the outskirts of that because she still lives in the US currently. But that was the whole issue on the weekend. She's going from a student visa to a working visa. And with everything going on in the US, she's like, she can get here. She's not sure if she can actually go back to her job in the US unless it's all kind of complete. It should be done in the next month, hopefully.
Right.
Because she's super excited and wants to showcase herself. She doesn't just message a captain for the sake of it.
Yeah, sure.
But I definitely think a lot of other players should be doing that. And I know Sanj does a really good job of compiling all these players. And they actually do send links to their footage. But it's hard to go through every single player and look at it. I think, like for me, like if players reached out to me and sent me a link, I was more likely to watch that and probably consider them off that. But definitely going into the draft, it was more like, here's 10 males that are local or Asia, 10 males from outside of Australia, like US and Europe. Same for the females. And I kind of just look at them. You can't be looking at 200 players.
No,
like
it's not realistic.
Some of us are working full time and trying to train.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like, look at your top 30 or 40 and see what's the best asset you can get to your team.
Do you think, and I don't think you're this, but do you think, and this might be a hot take, mate, so just tread lightly, do you think some captains are a bit too short-sighted in how they go about drafting and maybe their preparation and how much time and effort they put into it?
I think so, a little bit. Especially, I guess, seeing what some captains are doing maybe a week out from the draft, or they're asking questions because they're not sure of different things. I feel like previous years, I've had actually a few captains always reach out to me like, what am I allowed to do? What's supposed to happen? They always ask me for the rules. But I think
throw them off the scent.
I think this year it was very organised and everyone was on top of it. And especially some of these new captains that came in, like you had Kenta, you had Rose, you had Kyle Watnell, all these guys that have come in and they actually knew what to do. And I think this year, though. I think if you were a female captain, though, I think you probably had a little bit easier because the male pool was so expansive.
Yeah.
While the female pool, it was like, well, you had to really find like a diamond in the rough for, I guess, the second half of your draft. So I think it was probably a little bit more legwork for a few of us than maybe some of the others.
Yeah. Speaking about a bit of pickleball chaos, I guess the draft pool was pretty heavily impacted by some off-season events, shall we say, and even right up to the week, potentially the day of. I think that spreadsheet changed where ladies specifically, they just left. They were off the list all of a sudden.
Yeah, there was definitely like 5 US females that I was eyeing off that I potentially would have drafted as my next one. Potentially I was going to go a US male, but they got put off the list because they just could commit to 6 events or they knew maybe what was coming up in the PPA and MLP in the US, so they didn't want to be stuck here potentially.
Mate, if we could just circle back for a second, I'd be really interested in your point of view, considering, Tennis Australia based in Victoria. You've been a stalwart in Victoria. You are part of Pickleball Victoria. What do you think? What's your perspective on Tennis Australia and what they did at the start of the year and what they might do going forward, if you have one?
Well, let's go back to 2018 for a second. I remember when Jen and Pickleball Australia first started, I know Tennis Australia actually approached them back then and wanted to kind of take it over a little bit, do what they've done with Padel, which Tennis Australia actually basically runs Padel in Australia, and I feel like it bottlenecked it a lot. And I think that was what people were scared of back in 2019. And we're like, we can grow the sport ourselves. It's very grassroots. So I think Tennis Australia is kind of like piggybacking off all the hard work that a lot of us have put in for the last 7-8 years. So I think it's like kind of disappointing what they've done. I feel like the tournament and what they can do is really good for the sport, but I just don't like the whole idea of them coming in and then just being the governing body for Australia. Like I don't mind them being something else and actually help us, but it's more just everything else is, I think, disappointing. Obviously the Australian Open event this year was amazing. I was a part of that and I think it was great for the sport, but Tennis Australia probably needs to work with Pickleball Australia, hopefully. I don't know the ins and outs at the Pickleball Australia level anymore, but I just don't want something to happen where they take it over and then they're making people pay $1,000 to be a member or be coaches, and maybe they hinder different clubs from, especially outside of tennis clubs, from actually starting pickleball. And all the people have put in a lot of work.
So you're calling for more of a collaborative approach, really. Because I see it potentially as a bit of a gateway where, you're speaking about it with, the club that you started, which, ran into issues at a tennis club. And I think that is commonly the issue that we all find around the country and even over in the US and places where pickleball is thriving, right? That tennis clubs don't embrace pickleball as another thing, shall I say, a revenue maker. Because realistically it is. We all know you can fit 4 recreational pickleball courts on one tennis court, and we're happy to pay $15 an hour for the privilege. When you do the math, you're making more money doing that on the same space as a tennis court. So, from a revenue point of view and a business proposition, pickleball's this absolute winner. But for some reason, we just don't seem to get the traction when we go into tennis clubs. We can coexist. I believe we can, but I'm biased, right?
I think it's more tennis clubs that are struggling at taking pickleball on board, but all the tennis clubs that are really successful are not. The only one I found different to that is like Frankston, where I play and train. They kind of approached me, the end of last year or started last year, and then we're like, we want to start pickleball here. We've got 4 hot shots courts. I used to get coached by Stephen Foot's brother, who's the head coach at Frankston. And then I was like, why don't you start pickleball here? And they're like, we're going to do that. And we want to coordinate tennis and pickleball at the one venue. I think they've done an amazing job. Now they've had the PPA events, they've had our current Victorian championships. So tennis clubs can definitely work with like pickleball. I guess the hardest part is getting other tennis clubs on board to do the same thing, and then have, I guess, Tennis Australia's blessing. Like, I've got a really good example. Like 2-3 years ago, Kooyong, which is probably one of the most prestigious tennis clubs in Australia, used to have the Australian Open.
Yeah.
It's got all the grass courts, got over 100 years of history. We actually were invited there to run like a demo court for the Kooyong Classic. And I remember going there with Peter Johnston and the Chris Brown, the CEO of Kooyong Tennis Club, and the CEO couldn't actually get in a photo with me with playing pickleball on the centre court because he was scared of the backlash from Tennis Australia.
Really?
But Peter Johnston, he's the tournament coordinator or director for the Kooyong Classic and used to be a top Australian tennis player, he jumped on the court with me and I got to play pickleball on the centre court at Kooyong, which was really cool. But there's obviously just been a bit of, I think it was Tennis Australia has kind of been obviously not really backing pickleball for a long time, and it just seems like they've jumped in now because everyone, like, they've seen the growth and the money that's involved in it, and I think they just want to jump in for maybe some of the wrong reasons, even though I think they can obviously grow the sport with their immense amount of resources. But that's just my gut feel.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're bringing up invalid points. I mean, it was interesting to know, you might have already been aware of this, like when they did have that tournament at the start of the year, YouTube comments, they were off. And I think that was probably the right move considering, you know, when they finally did post something on their own Instagram, which is where I saw it. Mate, the amount of tennis people that were just against pickleball, you know, what are you doing? Oh, I couldn't, like, I expected it, but you know, when there's something like that that's posted and you're like, I know the first like 3, 4, 5 comments are going to be hate. But then I'm going to quickly get to this was good, this was great. Mate, it kept going and going and going and going. So we're really up against it when we talk about, you know, tennis. But one thing I will say, to their credit, they were the first of the 4 majors to ever do something collaboratively that involved pickleball. And I think that can only help grow the sport.
Yeah, it was an amazing, I don't know if you want me to talk about the experience, but it was amazing. Like, we got there, I was a fill-in because Aman and Harsh, who were obviously some of the top Indian players and some of the best players in the world, they couldn't make it. So I got to fill in as a Yola athlete, which I was super grateful for, to play against some of the other best players in Australia and outside of it. And we got there, we got our lanyard and our cards, and we could go where the tennis players all warm up and train and eat, and we got a full tour. Like, they were really welcoming. We had the Pickleball Australia referees, and it was just amazing. They've set up 2 really nice courts on show court 3 at the Australian Open, which outside of those 4 main courts, that's the next biggest one. And they obviously, the courts probably should have been a different colour. It probably wasn't too conducive, but I think just the whole atmosphere and what they did in the live streaming was like really professional, and they made us feel really welcome, which I was super grateful for.
Mate, getting back, I guess, to MLP Australia and the Melbourne Mavericks, what's something people might not see or appreciate about being part of MLP Australia, behind the scenes stuff that fans would love to know?
I think, all the draft stuff is a lot of work leading up to it, and I think just getting your team organised, making sure they're all got visas, can fly here, have got a com, they're sorted on that front. On the weekend, making sure everyone knows what court we're on, what time we are. I guess making sure your whole team is comfortable. I think there's just a lot of extra groundwork we do in the background, and that's what we sign up for as captains, which I'm fine doing. But I think, there's just all that extra groundwork can sometimes maybe impact your I guess pickleball sometimes. That's why, like, last season was really good having Coco as a coach, because she kind of took a few things away from me, so I could actually focus on the pickleball, which I think made me a better player for some of those rounds as well.
And mate, you mentioned that you are an ambassador for PPA.
Yeah.
And I mentioned off the top, perforated pickleball. And I wrote an article about Brisbane Cup was the first PPA event, and not all ambassadors were there. You were one of the ambassadors that weren't there. And what I wanted to sort of ask is, you know, without delving into the financial aspect of that agreement that you've got with PPA Australia, there is no agreement, to my understanding, that you've got to be present at all events. So exactly what is the arrangement as being an ambassador in terms of, you know, being at a number of events?
Yeah, well, there's obviously a certain amount of events we need to go to, but we don't have to be at every single event. So I think it's basically, obviously, without injury or sickness, you're supposed to be at all 6 PPA MLP events. And then there's supposed to be another 6 events, and you're supposed to be at least at 3. Obviously, for some of us, it's just time and financial. Like I'm still working full time.
Yeah,
but there's a
that's
lot
what
of,
you told me.
Yeah,
which I appreciate.
and a few other PPA ambassadors there. One of them's obviously living in the US still. That is moving here. Just it's been a slow process, but obviously a lot of these events are up in Queensland. I'm traveling from Melbourne, Victoria. If they were all in Melbourne, I would have no reason to take a Friday off and have to play the Saturday, Sunday. But for me, it's a lot of travel. I've got to pay for that, especially if I'm not getting a lot of prize money, because there is some very talented players now that play. So, and everyone's contracts are probably a little bit different in their own way.
Yeah. It's an interesting one to me because, you know, and I might be one of the few that carry this perception. I just thought an ambassador would mean every event, right? And stay with me here. I think that's not an unfair perception on the basis that, let's say you just mentioned travel, right? And every person's contract's different. And I guess what I'm feeling with your particular contract is you may not be being reimbursed for travel. You might get some sort of, you know, remuneration per se for extra prize money or to come to those particular 9 events. But in saying that, like when you go to Perth, my concern is what if no ambassador is there? Now, I dare say there's going to be Andy Horridge there, right? He lives in Perth.
Yeah.
But I'm really surprised that the PPA left themselves potentially exposed to not ensuring that contracts are in such a way that there's always going to be a majority of ambassadors at tournaments. So if it's that you don't have to turn up to more than 9, then they've kind of left themselves exposed. What do you think?
Well, I think the whole PPA Ambassador Program's been obviously great, especially keeping a few of us obviously maybe going to another league, for example, or helping us out with like obviously main draw and obviously exposure, all of that. Look, yeah, you could probably argue that it could open them up for some of those other events, but at an ambassador, if we can't make every event, and that's like for me, it's just time, money, could be whatever. For some of the others that are full-time pickleball, there's probably more of an expectation to go to Perth or some of those other events. But outside of that, look, the ambassador program is not just for people rocking up and playing. Like we're trying, like for me, for 8 years, I've been ambassador for the sport in general. Why not be an ambassador for the pro league that's helped me out? And I love the Melbourne Mavericks and the MLP and everything that Adam Sange and Tim and Ant and all that have been doing. So for me, it was a no-brainer just being part of them in some way, because I know they've looked after me and I'm happy to look after them.
Yeah. In terms of like how far maybe we've got to go, would it be fair to say that if travel expenses, accommodation included, was covered, it'd be much easier for you guys to commit to potentially all 12 events?
Yeah.
Or for you, might it be a bit of
definitely.
time
and I
as
think
well?
that is the case in the US. Like you think about the contracts in the US, like some of them are on $50,000, which might be lower end. And then you got Ben Johnson, Annalie Waters on over $1 million, and they've got to hit so many events. And if they don't go to all of them, they lose some money. But like, Pickleball in Australia isn't at that stage yet, unfortunately. But this is the first step. Like the PPA Ambassador Program, really good at the moment, and it's mean it can keep on improving. There's no reason why it couldn't.
Yeah. I would love to see that grow, right? Yeah. I'd love to see it grow for you guys as players where, you know, as you said, if more events were in Melbourne, you'd be at them, you know, but it's travel, expenses, it's time, you know, you work.
That's been the PPA Finals event, which will be in, I think, November or October. I'm definitely going to be there. It's going to be round the corner again at Frankston, hopefully.
Is that announced? I don't know if that's announced, is it?
Well, I don't know.
We assume it's going to be in Melbourne.
Anything can change till it's been put on Pickleball Bracket.
True.
So, yeah.
Do you reckon it'll be hosted at your home club, Frankston?
Yeah, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm sure they'll arrange another really good venue as well.
Maybe we could get into Rod Laver. Lofty ambition.
Let's see what Tennis Australia will let us do.
Mate, I do want to change. Let's change up the gear. So let's talk health. In 2021, you went through 6 months of chemotherapy for Hodgkin's lymphoma. So for those who have never heard of it, can you describe what it was, what is, and what you were going through at the time?
It's a blood cancer, stage 2. I think Delta Goodrum had it.
Did she?
Yeah, Delta
I remember
Goodrum
that.
It's
I had the hots for her.
It's the most common cancer for people aged like 18 to like 35.
Right.
And more prevalent in males. Obviously, having cancer is rare enough, but it is the most common cancer you can have at my age.
How old were you?
24, 23. I was only with Ellie for 6 months at that stage. So luckily she held on for me, but I just had a lingering.
Rock solid, Ellie. Rock solid.
I came out of being an accountant, and I think it was really stressful and traumatic for me at that stage, 2018 or 2019, and then 2020 COVID kind of hit, and I had like this lingering cough, and I was doing my placements for teaching because I was studying to be a teacher at that stage because I love talking to people and I love kids and stuff. Had a lingering cough. It was like my second last day on placement, and I had like a scan, and I got a CT scan, I think, and they asked me to stay back and do one with like the ink they put in, and I was like, oh my God, there must be something going on. Not thinking cancer, obviously.
Right.
And then I got a phone call like 2 days later, and they're like, oh, you need to come in and see this doctor. She's an oncologist. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Went in there, they didn't even tell me to bring anyone. So I'm like a 24-year-old that's like living his best life, found a new passion, which is teaching, playing pickleball at a high level. Like outside of COVID, that's meant I'd just come off national championships, and I thought I was at a really good place in my life. And yeah, sat down, and they were like, you've got Hodgkin's lymphoma. And at that stage, I didn't actually know what it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know it was a cancer until the doctor, she mentioned the word cancer. And I was like, oh my God, like, can I still work next week? Can I finish my placement next week? Or can I still finish my last semester of uni, my master's? And she was basically like, oh, you're going to have to do 6 months of chemotherapy. And then like, I remember, like, I don't cry often, but I just remember crying, and I was like, and then drove home, and I felt like terrible for like calling my parents and Ellie and everyone. I felt bad for even having it. Like I felt like I was like letting everyone down, even my friends and everything, which obviously looking back now, I'm like, I shouldn't have been sad that I obviously put this on everyone else. Like I was thinking too much about everyone else instead of me, like what I was going through. But yeah, it was pretty traumatic. Obviously very upset, and it turned my life upside down for 6 months because she said, oh, you've got a 30% chance of dying. 70% is a really good number. People are normally pleased with that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really pleased with that, to be honest. But I guess luckily for me, I had a really good support system in Ellie and my family and all my friends. And I was still living at home at the time. So it's not like I had a mortgage to pay or had children I had to worry about. It was kind of like I had my biopsy, which I still got the scar for because I had it all in my chest and my neck. So it was stage 2 because it didn't actually get lower than like my belly button, and it was all in my chest, my neck. So I didn't normally a lymphatic cancer, you can tell by like their armpits or where the lymph nodes are, but I didn't have any of that. It was all like in my chest, and it pushed on my esophagus. That's why I was like coughing and I wasn't sick. And that's how they randomly came across it. It was kind of just like, luckily the doctor's like, go get a CT scan. If not, it would have just kept on going. They reckon I probably had it for like 12 months at that stage.
Really?
And it could have potentially obviously got into other areas of the body. And luckily for me, it was stage 2. And obviously stage 4 being when it's everywhere and it's pretty hard to get rid of.
Because my understanding is it'll attack vital organs like your liver.
Yeah.
Right? It's a gnarly story. How it sounds like in the moment you didn't necessarily, like you digested the information, but it didn't really sink in. And then you were driving home making these phone calls to Ellie, your mum and dad?
Just crying, and then got back. I didn't even go home that night. I went to Ellie's, and I remember just laying there that night, and I was just looking up at the ceiling. I'm like, why is this happening to me? Like, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, I'm healthy. Like at that stage, I was like I'm like 10, 15 kilos lighter than what I am now. Like after treatment, obviously during treatment, I put on weight.
You put on weight?
Yeah, I put on weight because
you go the other way.
Because sometimes people get really nauseous and they lose weight. For me, it was like the steroids made me want to eat a lot. Okay. And obviously I was going through a pretty traumatic time. Yeah. So McDonald's just my best friend. Yeah. And it was COVID too. Like you couldn't go out or anything. Yeah. And chemotherapy, I obviously wouldn't recommend to everyone, but it was more like the first month. It was actually all right. Like I went in there, did my treatment. The first one was was hard because they don't know what's going to happen. Some people have heart attacks or they have issues straight away. So I was really freaking out about that. And I luckily had my dad there because I think Ellie and my mum were going to get way too upset. And my dad's pretty serious. So he was there as support. And then I remember someone next to me, it was their first time, like an older lady, she was going through breast cancer and she had a heart attack, but luckily they revived her. And I was like, oh my God.
What do you mean? You were there for her heart attack?
Yeah, like everyone's in a room. There's like 10 of us, like we're on nice couches and we're getting the chemotherapy and they were about to do me. And they did this lady before and she had like a heart attack because it's all they're pumping a lot of poison into you to obviously get rid of the cancer.
Yeah.
And they obviously closed the curtains and they revived her luckily. But it's like a code blue or something. I remember that then I was like really scared and luckily I had mine and then I was luckily fine. But like I was freaking out the whole time.
I can only imagine how traumatic that moment was, because that was going to be your first day of chemo.
Chemotherapy, yeah.
And the woman next to you has just gone into a heart attack.
Yeah.
And they've told you that this could be a byproduct of this for you. Fucking hell.
Because if that happens, say, I think they try it once more, and then if they can't do that, then they've got to find an alternative way. And obviously chemotherapy's had the best results, and especially lymphatic cancers. So it could have been a whole different story maybe for her and for me if that eventuated. But yeah, got through the first one. Literally you're on steroids the first few days and that helps you like kind of be alert and you're not unwell. It tries to avoid the nausea. And luckily for me, I didn't like vomit a lot or anything like that. It was more that I kind of felt like half normal after that. Like I was walking around, like went to a nightclub as like a cancer patient. Because I tried to keep my life like normal for the start because I didn't want to be like that person that's sitting at home thinking, oh, I'm a cancer patient. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to be sad for myself. It was kind of like, I want to be really positive about it all, which I thought I did a really good job of. And then and I knew that would make it easy for everyone else in my life too. If they just saw me like still living my life normal. It was only like after the first month I started losing my hair and I went to hospital because obviously you lose all your I think white blood cells when you do chemotherapy. So it gets rid of all the good and the bad and you get really unwell. And I remember being in hospital because I was just really sick and like I couldn't swallow or anything like that. And I remember having to go on endo and just for me to like function, to eat and drink. And then I had Ellie sneak in McDonald's for me into the hospital because I was like, this is like the worst thing ever. I'm like a cancer patient. I'm in hospital. I was in a public hospital, so there was like 4 people around me that would just cough all night and they wake you up every hour because they've got to do the blood pressure tests and stuff. It was like, definitely the worst experience, that first one. And luckily after that, they give you something which boosts your white blood cells when you've done chemo because they don't do it straight away, which they should. Which so I told everyone, like especially like someone like Martin Clark, I'm like, if they offer you that injection you put in yourself for your white blood cells, like do that because it prevents you from getting really sick to then not, so you don't have to go to hospital.
Right.
It was kind of like after that, lost my hair, shaved it, had like a little party to shave my hair, which so Ali got to shave the last bit of it all and all my friends got to join in. So like I kind of made it like a special moment. And it was like leading up to, I think, Easter, because I was in hospital over Easter at that point. And it was like Easter Monday, got all my friends, we shaved my hair. I was just pulling it out. I had really thick hair at that stage, pulled it all out or shaved it. And then it was like a month or 2 later, it's like the chemotherapy started getting really bad. It was like, you're good for the steroids the first few days. And once you're off the steroids, you could not get out of bed for like 10 days because you have a cycle. You get injected, you do the chemotherapy every 14 days. At the start, like I could function. And then by the last 3 months, you're bedridden for 10 days after treatment. And then you get the last 2 days of your cycle, you feel half all right. So then I'd go and play pickleball or do something. And then you're back in the chair and then you do that cycle all over again. And by the end, you literally just couldn't do anything in the last month. So I was obviously very happy that obviously halfway through they did some more scans and they found that it had all gone. Like you find out like a couple months in, but you got to do the whole 6 months of chemotherapy to make sure it's out of there. So yeah, did the 6 months and I think my last treatment was like a week before or a week after my birthday. But I think like if you look at photos of me progressively over that time, like I have really thick eyebrows. They just like disappeared. I had one eyelash at the end, and like had no beard, had no hair anywhere. So it was like for me, it kind of looked like a normal progression. But then for all my friends that might not have seen me for a month or two because we were during COVID at that time, they would see me and be like, they didn't. You could tell on their face that they could just see that I looked sick and I looked like a cancer patient, but they obviously never said anything. But look, pickleball and being a secretary, I was actually the secretary of Pickleball Victoria during that time. It's the only thing that kept me sane because I'd sit there on my laptop and do a lot of stuff and felt like I was doing something good for the community and got to play a little bit of pickleball. I even played an event early on. I had really low energy, so I just played in I still played in like the 3.5 plus division, but I think I just played one game like every hour because they just allowed me to. Just so I could be involved still. Yeah.
Let's talk about the redemption arc.
Yeah.
So in 2022, you returned to win the Queensland Championships. What did that comeback mean to you?
It meant a lot because at that stage, like all the best pickleballers in the country went to that event. A lot of them are in Queensland at the time. Like you had Wes Vine, you had Tarn, you had obviously Mitch there, you had Ben Costin, you had David Richardson, Mike Newell, Brendan Lee, like all these OGs on the men's side. Obviously
Still around. All
Martin
these people are
Clark,
still around.
Sarah Burr and Martin Clark were hitting their straps at that stage. Obviously, the Vine brothers during COVID, I was getting envious of because I was like, oh my God, these guys are good. I want to play them, but we couldn't fly up.
They're Slam Jam royalty, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
They've been.
So that was the first time I met the Vine brothers and obviously Ripper Blokes and Wes as a teacher as well.
I don't know. South Africans are kind of hard at times. They're good, though.
No, they're really good. But yeah, came to that. The weekend before that event, I actually played the Tasmanian Championships and I played Mitch in the final for singles and he beat me. After, obviously, I beat him at the 2019 Nationals, so he owed me one. And then I lost him in the doubles as well, in the mixed and the men's doubles. And then we went to Queensland. I was like, God, I need a win here, like just for my own journey. Went there, played with Alex Ung in the pro or the open division at that stage, and we beat some really good pairs, and we made the final. I think it was like Mike Newell and Brendan Lee, and we beat them in straight sets. And like I actually couldn't believe it at that stage because obviously 6 months prior to that, I only just finished chemotherapy, and so I think I got quite emotional that night because I was in Queensland. Ellie wasn't there, but I was like, oh my God, I've done it. Like won probably the biggest event of the year. I won back then you could play the age division as well. I played that with Brendan Lee. And at that time, David Richardson and Sumi were like the toughest pair to beat outside of the Vine brothers. And we beat them in the aged final. And all those open pairs all played in that too. So it's almost like you're winning 2 open medals for this event. So I was super happy, like they're my proudest medals up there, and even compared to my Australian titles. But I think the hardest one at that event was that I had to play against Sarah Burr and Martin Clark, but they were way too strong at that event. And I lost to Mitch in the semi-final at that event in singles. But yeah, I've always seen myself as a double specialist. So the doubles, especially men's doubles, is my main event. And I was super happy to take the win in both gender doubles.
Mate, what role did pickleball play in your recovery? Was it motivation, distraction, therapy, or something else entirely?
All the above, really. It was my motivation to kind of get fit and active again. Pickleball was something that I found natural to me and I thought I was pretty good at and hopefully still am good at. So I just wanted to get straight back into it. And obviously I was pretty big in the community in Victoria still at that stage. I was still the secretary. I was still on the board. I started all these clubs. Like pickleball for me was always like a hobby and the funnest thing that I do in my life. And it's almost like my personality. That's what all my friends say.
No, it's not bad.
That's what Ellie says too. I just, honestly, my main motivator, especially in pickleball, is like if I could look back when I'm like 80 or 90 and be like, oh my God, like look at this sport now. And like I was at the start, like I think that's pretty cool and amazing for me. Like I don't care how much money or whatever comes from, it's more just like the growth of the sport. I feel like it's my own little baby, especially in Victoria. And I've just been blessed that I got to be a part of it from the ground up.
Mate, when you're standing on a court now, playing professionally, do you ever think back to that period, to being treated for Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm playing against these guys that haven't gone through serious health battles, which I'm obviously very pleased they haven't. But like for me, just going through that, I guess probably proved to me like what I can do, my resilience and how mentally strong I am on the court as well as off the court. I think I proved a lot of things during that time, and especially coming back. I obviously had a lot to prove because I thought at that stage I was still the best or one of the best players in Australia. So I knew I had to prove that. But yeah, pickleball just been an awesome part of my life, especially on that front.
I really want to get into that mindset because I've personally, fortunately, never been faced with an equation where death is on the cards, potentially, right? So I'm really interested to know, did that experience shift your mindset as a competitor, a captain, or just a person living day to day?
I think more a person. Like I guess leading up to chemotherapy, I was like, I need a high paying career. I want to obviously look after people that are close to me in my life, like someone like Ellie, like want to give them the best life I can. But I want to work and do that. But then after obviously doing chemotherapy, like it changed all my expectations on my life. I just wanted to do something that I really enjoy and I'm passionate about, which is obviously playing pickleball, helping that grow, but also becoming a high school teacher, which I still really love. Shout out to John Paul College for letting me do all this pickleball. But I think it just changed my mindset on about going about my life. I could have potentially died, could have got to that stage in my life and maybe continued going down a road where, maybe making a lot of money, but not liking my life. But at this stage, I've known all my decisions is to make my life better and happy, because I know the happier I am, the happier I'll be for my wife or for my children or for even my friends and people that I can be around.
When you think about Ellie and your parents now, like, and going through that and supporting you, and you're engaged now, so congratulations. That was last year? Yeah.
In between Vietnam and the Melbourne MLP events.
Lovely. Was it a long time coming, Ellie? How long have you been together for? 5 years. It wasn't too long, but it was getting to the point, yeah. And that's 5 Christmases where you have to keep batting it off.
I had the ring 5 months prior. I just had to figure out when I exactly wanted to do it. So did propose to her at the beach where we had our first date. So that was nice.
Nice. So what does she mean to you then?
I guess she means everything to me. Like for me, she does so much for me that makes my life so much easier. So I can teach and follow my passions like pickleball and do everything. And she makes my life so much easier. And I love her so much for that.
Good on you, Ellie.
Especially during that time when obviously I went through a very rough patch. She was there and this mean we're only together 6 months at that stage. So she obviously could have given me the boot for someone a bit healthier. But she obviously loved me for who I was, and I'm very grateful for that.
It shows, mate. It really does. I want to change it up now. Let's get a different vibe going. And thank you so much for sharing that. I did ask you before, and you said, mate, it's all on the table. So, mate, I want to talk about Pickler's Parchment. All right. So let's take a pause, because before we finish up, Blitz, I want to do something a little different for all the listeners. If you've recently found yourself deep in the unregulated media swamp that is pickleball satire, then you've probably seen Pickler's Parchment pop up. And if you aren't familiar, or in fact never heard of them, Pickler's Parchment is Australia's unofficial, highly unauthorised and questionably sourced satirical news outlet dedicated to all things pickleball. Now, we don't officially endorse them, obviously, but we do know one of the so-called journalists behind it, a guy who goes by the name of Dink McEnroe. He sends us the occasional press release in Comic Sans and aggressively insists they are breaking stories. So we figured what better way to honour his efforts than to have our guest put on the news anchor hat and read one aloud. So Aaron Blitz, you're up. We've got 3 Pickler's Parchment headlines here. I want you to read all 3 out and then pick one. So
there's one with UV. That would be probably high up there.
There are your 3. So if you wouldn't mind reading them all out, and then you've got to pick one.
Masters player with 5 gold medals using mod TA15 insists it doesn't make a difference. I feel like I'm playing Cards Against Humanity here. It's not that bad. Queenslander downplays Victorian Open heat wave while Cyclone Alfred smashes their hometown. Amateur players delighted to hear the new Yola Pro 4 is worth every cent from sponsored pros.
All right.
I'm happy to talk about that one since I'm a Yola sponsored player.
Okay, careful what you wish for.
It is worth every cent though, and I can guarantee
Hey,
that.
you're going off script. Now turn that piece of paper over. Now you can do it in your own voice, an anchor voice, an anchor man voice if you want. Take it away.
Brisbane, Australia. Pickleball enthusiasts across Australia have breathed a collective sigh of relief after hearing that Yola's latest $439 paddle, the Pro 4, is worth every cent, according to players who didn't pay for it. I can give you that guarantee. It is worth every cent. With early reviews from Yola-sponsored professionals flooding social media, amateur players are reportedly thrilled to learn that the new paddle feels like cheating, has unbelievable spin, and has an extra-large sweet spot. I can tell you it has an extra large sweet spot, but there is definitely some paddles out there with more spin. One pro even went as far to say it's honestly underpriced. Facts. I was really on the fence about spending nearly $500 on a paddle, said Steve Darby, a mid-level club player from Brisbane, but then I saw 3 sponsored pros post the same word-for-word review, and that really reassured me. I like to be creative with mine. It's not normally the same. Other players echoed similar sentiments. One guy said he wouldn't use anything else, noted local competitor Jason Lee. There's a few Jasons around. That's when I knew I needed to make some financial adjustments. No more morning coffees, no more streaming services, just me, the Yola Pro 4, and a newfound respect for instant noodles. Despite the glowing endorsements, a small percentage of players who have actually paid full price for the paddle remain sceptical. I mean, it's nice, admitted Lauren Fitzpatrick, a Sydney amateur, but I was kind of expecting it to double as an air conditioner given the price tag. In Vietnam, it was actually a really good fan. But meanwhile, Yola remains confident that the paddle's quality will speak for itself. At the end of the day, it's about performance, a spokesman said. And if performance means pros who get it for free tell you it's amazing, then really, what more proof do you need? It is definitely the best paddle on the market and the best thing you'll ever buy.
Way to finish. Way to finish. Mate, thanks for indulging us. If you haven't checked out Pickler's Parchment, make sure you give them a follow. And that's not an endorsement, by the way. Mate, I think that's about all we've got time for. We've spent an hour together, and I was really looking forward to this, and I'm so glad that you stayed back so that we could do it. You answer questions so well, and it's a confronting story having to face what you have, but it's been awesome to sort of wind the clock back and you to take us all the way back because you are one of the OGs. I would just like to finish by asking if you could go back to the first day you picked up a paddle, knowing the battles, the wins, the illness, the growth, what would you say to that version of Aaron Blitz?
Oh my God, that's a really good question. I guess, follow your passions, and that's exactly what I did, and I still do outside of pickleball as well. So I think that's the only thing that got me through my treatment is my passion, obviously my love for Ali, my love for teaching, my love for pickleball. Passion is what's got me through some very hard times and all my best times.
Aaron Blitz.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, mate.